Huli ka ni Jojo Sibial. You have the right to remain silent.
We welcome everyone to this meeting of EDCOM2 and the Department of Education.
Together, the DepEd endeavors to establish a nation that values its youth and a Filipino youth that values its nation. Towards this end, we come here filled with enthusiasm to sit and work with you. As this meeting commences, it is of utmost importance that we are all guided by a common understanding of a systematic and inclusive engagement among stakeholders, which is a critical component in the fulfillment of our goals and targets. Ang lahat para sa Diyos, sa bayan, at sa bawat pamilyang Pilipino. Shukran.
Thank you very much, Madam Vice President. Allow me to give my opening remarks. Before anything else, I would like to thank the Department of Education agenda of the EDCOM2, and this was called out of various consultations, various workshops that we have undertaken in the last 3 months. The commissioners and also our advisory council gathered together to thresh out all of the priority issues that we have to look at in the next 3 years from 2023 to 2025. Improving learning outcomes will require, number 1, education and nutrition interventions. Number 2, the availability of other support to learners in school and outside of school. Active participation of both national and local governments. And number 4, urgent interventions as well as longer-term reforms. And we have identified 28 priority areas that I will discuss briefly later on. And I will also leave a copy of the PowerPoint presentation to DepEd, so our respective working groups can collaborate later on to go into the details of the 28 priority areas. In fact, the local government units are the ones financing, hiring, and launching their own program among the early childhood daycare centers of our country. So this is a setup that we need to look at because there's obviously a gap within policy and implementation on the ground. So we have to look at governance and financing of ECCD as a very important factor in terms of its success. For basic education, just to give context, while we are at par with rich countries in terms of attendance, we are way below our potential. There is a learning gap of 5.5 years, meaning for a learner who is undergoing 12 years of basic education, only 6.5 years is being learned by that same learner. Only 2/3 of students in rural schools had 1 textbook per student. An average Filipino student spent more time in school but were less productive than their counterparts in comparator countries. Additional classrooms are needed, given that school buildings in certain remote areas do not meet quality and safety standards. Enrollment is increasing and existing classrooms deteriorate due to wear and tear of calamities. And the commissioners as well as our advisory council identified priority areas in basic education. I won't go into the issues because these are details of the priority areas, but we have identified learning resources as a priority area that we should look at. Measurement of learning outcomes. As we all know, we have the National Achievement Test, but how do we use the National Achievement Test? How do we cull the data in order to come up with reforms is another issue that we have to look at. Curriculum and instruction is also another issue, and we have to look at the medium and language of instruction, and this is where Congressman Roman is very passionate about. We also have to look at the decongestion and also even reviewing the spiral method in the spiral curriculum method in the curriculum and instruction area. In terms of teacher education and development, just to give context, teaching profession has among the lowest passing rates compared to other board examinations. teacher performance on content knowledge and assessment was poor. Also, the priority areas that we will be looking at: alignment of CHED, PRC, DepEd to include the Teacher Education Council on teacher education and development. Also, the in-service training and development. In terms of governance and finance, ensuring seamless and integrated delivery of education as one of the priority areas. Complementarity between public and private education. We want to look at also how we can maximize and utilize the nimbleness of our private education and also exhaust their excess capacity when it comes to infrastructure. We will be looking at integrated performance management and accountability system, efficiency and equity in financing, resource mobilization and delivery of education. We will also look at decentralization, quality of education, governance, and participatory governance. We also believe that the local government units play a very important role in delivering basic education. There's a underutilized body, which is the local school board, that we have not tapped in terms of exerting accountability at the local level.
Thank you very much, Senator Gatchalian. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be presenting the DepEd updates and directions based on EDCOM priorities on behalf of the Department of Education, led by our very hardworking Vice President and Secretary of Education, Sara Duterte. Kasama din nun, very beautiful, very gorgeous, very charming. And it's good to see familiar faces, friends that I worked with before I joined DepEd. We've shared the same advocacy in education. I'd like to echo what Senator Win said earlier, that we share the same goals, and the priorities of EDCOM are very closely aligned with the directions of the Department of Education based on Matatag Education Agenda. So, our presentation is focused on 4 areas: basic education, teacher education and development, and then a little on TechVoc education because we have senior high school, and then governance and finance. So the first one is on basic education. So I'll give you directions and updates on learning resources, bundling the procurement of development, printing, and delivery, to introduce electronic textbooks for certain core subjects in senior high school. By the way, the Vice President created the School Infrastructure and Facilities Strand to address long-standing issues on educational facilities and infrastructure. So these are our numbers: 74,874, K-10, 10,500, K-12, 7,240. Total number of rooms, 799,200. So we have 656,968 instructional rooms, and then we have non-instructional rooms, 656,968,000. So these are our strategies to address the gaps. We're addressing the current requirements for facilities by 2030, and that's a commitment of USEC evidencing. Okay. We will mobilize resources and partnerships for the school building program. We will build more resilient schools and classrooms for 2023, our target. Our alternative learning system, we grant special hardship allowance to our ALS teachers. For financial year 2023, DepEd has allocated 70 Teacher 1 items for ALS. We're set to conduct a tracer study of ALS learners to determine the impact of the alternative learning system and then to find out where our ALS graduates go.
Thank you, Yusek Gina.
Secretary, thank you very much for being here. Alam niyo po, sa totoo lang, napaka-importante nung presence niyo as Secretary of Education simply because sa dami po ng problema ng Department of Education, kailangan talaga political will. And when you came aboard as a secretary, I think you brought in hope to many of those who really want change to happen. Alam niyo, Madam Secretary, marami kasi dyan, alam naman yung problema eh. Alam rin yung sagot, pero minsan talagang political will. That is why with you at the helm of the of the department. Hopefully, these changes can happen quickly. Siguro rin, Madam Secretary, I just want to react sa mga sinabi ni Ma'am Gina. No? Una po, yung sa mother tongue. Ano? Sa mother tongue po, actually, sa House of Representatives, pasado na po kami on third and final reading. Ang sinabi po namin doon, pareho ng sinasabi po ninyo. Sinasabi namin ang mother tongue o the language that one is used to, a learner is used to, okay sa amin yun. Kaya ang tinanggal lang po namin ay yung mandatory nature. So schools, principals, and teachers can still choose. Kung tingin nila yun yung pinaka-effective, payag kami. Kasi sa ilalim po ng KTO12 law ngayon, it's mandatory. Kaya kawawa rin po yung teachers. Kaya pinasa na po namin yun on third and final reading. Ang tinanggal lang namin, yung mandatory nature. Payag kami kahit ano, kung ano yung pinaka-effective. Pangalawa, sa spiral progression, we are about to pass that also. Aalisin na rin po namin yung mandatory nature. We want to give the teachers the flexibility on how to teach a subject. Mas alam po nila, depende, hindi katulad ngayon sa KTO12 law, mandatory po eh. Wala akong choice eh. Pangatlo, babanggit niyo yung problema natin sa registered guidance counselors. Pasado na rin po namin on third and final reading sa House. Ang sinasabi po namin, pansamantala, papayagan po natin kahit hindi siya registered guidance counselor. Papayagan po natin, una, yung mga graduates ng allied courses na may at least 12 units of behavioral science. Papayagan rin po natin dapat yung teachers, kung gusto nila. At kung tingin ng principal, karapat-dapat sila. Ang dami na po masyadong mental wellness na nangyayari. Sinabi po namin sa naming version, ang sabi po namin, angatin na rin po natin yung salary grade. Pagka registered guidance counselor ka, huwag naman salary grade 11. Mag-umpisa tayo sa 16 para kahit pa paano may karera ka naman pagdating po nung usapin po ng career mo. Sa 11 and 12 po, sabi nyo nga, rine-review po ninyo. Tama po sa amin po, halos nasa floor na po namin for passage on third and final reading. Inaamyenda na po namin yung creative arts, yung arts and design, at inaamyenda na rin po namin yung curriculum ng TVL. Ang sabi po namin, 50% of the curriculum must be done by the experts. Yung mga industriya po, kaya ang sabi natin, dapat imbitahin natin ang TESDA, imbitahin natin ang DTI, ang mga business communities na sumama po doon sa formulation, kasama rin po dyan sa creative arts. Pero Ma'am Gina, pinag-uusapan namin share Margo, nabanggit mo kanina, pati ni Kong Kiko ata, nabanggit mo na i-release nyo na po yung K-10 curriculum po ninyo. Gusto nyo talagang, it's not a DepEd curriculum, but a curriculum of everyone. Pero Ma'am Gina, matagal ka na rin po sa gobyerno, matagal na rin po siguro kayo sa DepEd. Alam natin ang totoo. Minsan talaga, we have to dive into it, do it, and then from there, develop it eh. As public servants, we have to take, that risk eh. Pero hindi na po pwede yung status ko ngayon. We have to move on. And siguro marami pa po akong gustong banggitin, pero marami rin gusto magsalita, mag-react. Ito na lang po, importante rin po sana po, pinag-uusapan namin yung sa 1 to 3. Masayang-masaya po kami, I think si VP Sara nakabanggit na nito, yung pagbawas ng subjects. Talagang ma'am, ang kabataang Pilipino, matalino talaga at magaling. Yung PISA na yan, huwag niyo na isipin yan kasi that was a fluke for the simple reason that mother tongue got in the way. And medyo nandun tayo sa Pero it's not a reflection of the Filipino student. Ang kailangan lang po natin sa isang Filipino student, turuan magbasa at naintindihan niya yung binabasa niya. Reading lang at mathematics at yung GMRC. Siguro po, talagang sabi niyo nga ni Ma'am Sara, babawasan niyo yan talaga. I think we are really hoping that we get to that point na talagang let us give the Filipino child the chance na reading. Kaya po niya eh. Basta marunong siya magbasa at naintindihan niya in whatever language o dialect na gusto na tingin natin komportable sila. And again, Vice President, I will not take too much time anymore, but we are very happy that you are the helm of this department and you have the full support, especially of the House, and I'm sure, kanina pa binabanggit ni Senator Win, from the Senate. Ito po, magtulong-tulungan na tayo. We have this opportunity political will kasi po ang sagot talaga sa lahat ng problema ng DepEd eh. And with you at the helm, I think we will be able to achieve this. Thank you, ma'am.